All right, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 12 of Golden Dice Podcast. And with me, I have the one, the only, the true man himself. He's back in all of his glory, Tommy.
What's up, Jack? Thank you for having me back, for not shunning me and trading me in for that younger, newer model, Shane. But I'm happy to be here. I'm a dad. I'm thrilled. So life is busy, but wonderful.
Yeah, you were telling me that you're just absolutely loving the kid at home.
It's amazing. It's incredible. Anybody who is a dad knows what I'm talking about. It changes everything. Like, you can't even. You watch shows or movies and you have like a totally new perspective. You like relate with the parents. And, I'm not at the point where there's no dating or anything like that, but like just thinking about the future and like all the crazy, oh man, it's overwhelming and amazing. It really is just a blessing. It's so cool.
When you're grocery shopping and another family walks by with a baby female, you're like scoping out that, be like, you better treat my son right. You better watch yourself.
I can't even think about that right now. Overwhelmed.
Yeah. So I'm obviously glad to have you back. And speaking of babies, I didn't listen to the episode yet. I haven't had time as of recording this, but I believe D-House had his child, I guess, within this past week or so. So congratulations and shout out to him. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Now you two can hang out together and talk about babies and then get to Destiny.
Yeah, that's not that far, right? It's probably like an 8-hour drive from me.
Yeah, exactly. And for anybody wondering, we tried to get Shane on, but his parents are on the phone and it, dial up, it blocks it out. As of last week, you could tell his internet was a little fuzzy.
Yeah, our Patreon's not good enough to get Shane a real internet connection yet.
Maybe we'll upgrade him from dial up one day. But he just couldn't be here this week. So going forward, we'll probably be the three of us. Weeks might change. Tommy might have some kid things to take care of. Shane might have some things to take care of. And it'll bounce around. But generally, we'll be having
Wi-Fi reception in Shane's parents' basement. Might not be great.
Yeah, exactly. It might be tough. We'll see how it goes going forward. And we'll continue to try to get some guests on here. I've been talking to some other content creators, and hopefully we got some stuff in the works for you guys. But our normal kick it off as we always do, our weekly recap. Tommy obviously hasn't been to a weekly tournament in a little bit, and this past week was awful for me, so we'll keep it short. This was the first Monday after all the regionals in our area have been done. Maryland got pushed back those 2 weeks, so it got extended a little bit. So this week everybody kind of brought off meta type things, kind of whatever. And I brought Finn 2 and Kanan, and I wanted to die. It was awful. It's just like everything I tried to get going in that deck just didn't happen. First game I played against Han Ray, which is a pretty decent deck, and time tested, still around a little bit, and that just kind of kicked my butt. I got a good roll, was able to kill off Ray, but Han was like fully loaded. The mitigation that Yellow has, of course, he was able to stay alive and keep going. And so lost that one. Second game, I played a Krennic Greedo, and I just got rolled off the board. I compression fielded, I guess, 6 damage in the first 3 rounds, but he still put like 20 through. And I was like, this game hurts. And last game, I played against Poe Hondo. So suppression field and honor guard didn't work, and it was, Yoda Hondo is a real deck, so that it was not fun to play against.
Yeah, that is definitely a real deck to bring to. I mean, Han Ray's kind of a real deck too. I mean, it's not your typical meta deck, but it's I would still say it's competitive.
Yeah, he rolled out Yoda, rolled out Hondo, and I was like, all right, got defensive position in my hand. Oh, they're all specials or ones. All right, cool.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Easy pickings would be great, but you're not running yellow there. So
exactly. So it was, it was good. It was fun to see stuff. I think Joe ended up winning with a TIE pilot, First Order Stormtrooper, Bazine, and Night Sister.
Yeah, it sounds like a Joe deck. That sounds about right.
It's a vehicle
Joe
support.
winning has been a pretty common theme for our meta lately. Joe's been on quite a tear. He's been having good showing at the regionals too. I think he got a top 4 and a top 8 at the 2 regionals that he attended. So good for him.
Yeah, he's been doing well. Yeah, he got the top 8 at Maryland with Tarkin 7 Sister, which you're still taking offense that nobody likes it and that I don't play it.
I don't take offense. I think it's an underrated deck. I think that it can compete with with most of the decks in the meta. I think it has some bad matchups, but no more than any other deck.
Yeah, you're not upset. You just think I'm an idiot.
Debatable.
But yeah, so that was our weekly tournament. It was cool. I was actually so done with the game at the end that when they handed out packs, I got 2 and I just gave them to a new player. And then he ended up pulling Maul's lightsaber, and he was running Kylo Talzin, so it ended up working out for him. I'm glad that he was able to get those packs out of my misery. So
yeah, it's me and Shane's buddy Flockton. Go Flockton. Put that saber right in the deck, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dude, he texted me like 2 days ago, I think, and he like went back and listened to all of our episodes, and he's all caught up and stuff now. I was like, you mad lad.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so that's our weekly tournament for the week. And yeah, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I have nightmares.
I'm trying to live vicariously through you, Jack. You gotta rep us a little better here. You gotta throw that nice yellow shirt on and rep it.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, dude. Now Legion, man, that was my week this week.
Oh boy, wrong podcast
today. Yes.
I can't talk about spending all that money. I need diapers and wipes.
Well, you can cut back and use like tissues sometimes, right? And then maybe buy.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, just a little bit of warm water and some tissue.
Yeah, perfect.
My wife will be thrilled.
Oh, of course. But that game was awesome. But yeah, anybody who's curious about that, trying that out, you should definitely do Legion, man. Oh, that was so much fun. But yeah, we'll stick to Destiny, I guess. We'll move forward onto regional recap. There was a bunch this weekend, but I'm just going to read off. I'll read off 5 of them, and I'll read off the winners of them just so you guys continue to have an idea of what decks are performing and what decks are showing up. You know, at this point, nothing should really come as a surprise to you guys. Maybe just the one in the UK, but I'll get to it. So Yoda Hondo won the regional in Maryland with 73 people. Mother Bala Trooper won the one in Arizona with 41 people. The OTK Blue Red deck won a regional in Washington with 57 people. And Sabine Yoda won one in Colorado with 44. And Kylo 2 Anakin won one in the UK with 39 people. And I have to say, like, first thoughts, just looking at that, the Kylo 2 Anakin's interesting. That's been popping up a lot, it seems like, at least in the European setting. But I really don't see that too much breaking out much in the US setting.
It is interesting. I think it's, I mean, you immediately would compare it to the Kylo 2 Talzin deck that we've seen some. It has had pretty decent showings in the States. And the interesting part about Kylo 2 Anakin is it opens you up to not really worry about how your deck's constructed. You lose the consistency that Talzin brings. You gain a little bit more health, but you don't have to build your deck in a certain way. But you also lose Witch Magic, which is a really nasty card. Witch Magic might be better than her ability. I mean, I know you get such value from her ability off every activation, but Witch Magic is amazing. But it's interesting to see that Anakin definitely has more damage potential on his dice. But you know, Talzin's ability should also balance that out. But I definitely think that it could be a fine deck. I mean, it opens you up to have the No Mercy play without any downside of having the even cost card in your deck. You could run, you know, a Holocron Suite or just all the 2-cost upgrades. Like, you don't have to be afraid of running Ancient Lightsaber or any other melee weapons for that matter. So it's I would be interested to see the full deck list.
Yeah, it gives you some 4-cost mitigation in there, or free mitigation, at least 4 of them, right? You could put the hidden motives and doubts in there again, like you said, without fear of missing some big stuff. They're missing out on her ability.
Yeah, and those are solid removal cards, specifically when Maul's Lightsaber is a popular card in the meta. They're both very strong against that card, or that die in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing that surprises me is that every time I've either played with Anakin or against him, I've just been unimpressed. Like, I've never been too scared of him, and I always feel like his special side ends up being a blank. Like, unless you start building those decks, you have to now plan around not odd costs, but neutral and villain.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as a blank that has the opportunity to be 2 damage in the right situation, and I understand that it's probably not going to happen with any great amount of frequency where you're like, oh, I don't need this card at all. It happens to be villain, and I'm showing a special side. But when it does happen, I'm sure it feels nice, but it's not something that I would ever consider building around and or counting on.
Yeah, but then you kind of feel bad for putting 13 points in a character who's damage dealing, and he's still pretty good with 2 2s.
2 2s, he's got 10 health. I mean, he's pretty standard for 10-13, and then he's got a 1.5 blanks, I guess you could say, ish. It's kind of how I have it in my head, at least. value wise.
Yeah, that's true. He's interesting though, and it's also cool. Cool. I don't know is the word, but we haven't really seen him in any hero lists, and I really don't know if he has a spot for them either. Because 2 shields just feels a little bit worse than 2 damage, and also that pay side. And I feel like hero decks is a little bit tougher because I don't know. I feel like hero blue has a little bit more trouble with resources, but now everybody makes money, so it's a little bit more of a moot point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make money in any deck if you consciously build in that direction, especially if you have yellow and you have like Maz's Vault or something, or even just Yoda in the deck. You can make money, but the shields don't feel as good as the 2 damage more often than not, but 2 shields is a lot better now than it ever was pre-Vibro Knife nerf. So it's still a valuable side. I mean, if you have 2 shields showing on a die, you more often than not you're very happy to resolve that die. So at the cost of a card doesn't feel great though. It's like a bad caution.
But you can put it on anybody. There you go.
That's true. You can put it on the character that's die you removed.
Yeah, Shane's been playing me with Afra a lot recently. And honestly, the side I hate the most out of her is probably her 2 shield side.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's her best die side.
Yeah, she's a wonky character, but that side definitely is the one that I want to see the least. Because other than that, she's kind of all over the place, though. Like, she's got a 2 gun, she's got 2 indirect, a discard, 2 shield,
gun
and
for
a resource.
Though.
Yeah, 2 gun for a resource, yep. So that's not too bad, making him pay money, and half the time he's trying to put that money into supports, so that's kind of like an awkward side.
Yeah, it's one that I think you resolve more often in the later portion of the game.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, looking at these top ones, as we said, Kylo Anakin is the only surprising one, and that was in the UK. Yoda Hondo, and it is surprising that Hondo is still popping up. And I think even if you go back a few episodes, I said that I thought the Poe Hondo version was a little bit better, but I've clearly been wrong with that. Not that it's necessarily toe-to-toe worse, I think, but with the resilience of shields and whatnot, and Yoda having 2 special sides, so almost 2 shield sides, along with the rise of Maul Saber and whatnot, I think he just has a better spot than Poe in that deck when you're just trying to live longer, steal money, and play big upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of healing in that deck with the Lone Operative or the Force Heal or however they decide to go with it, depending on how many upgrade slots they want to commit to that. But as players adapt and decks adapted to Hondo and how to effectively limit his damage output and when to pay him, when not to pay him, the Hondo decks then, were able to adjust and have a lot as aggressive as of a deck as it is. They're able to have a surprising amount of sustain with all the consistent healing and shielding that they can do. Also, I think this was at Maryland, so this is Isaac, right? The young man who's very talented.
Yoda Hondo, yeah.
Yeah, I know he placed at Nationals at Nova this past year, and I had a chance to play him at Booten. He's a very good player.
Yeah, he definitely is. He was even at Connecticut too, but I think at Connecticut he was running hero vehicles.
Okay.
And I guess he just wasn't able to fare as well but yeah, I got to play him at a store championship in North Jersey, and that's where I got a chance to play him. And yeah, phenomenal player, really nice kid too, good sportsmanship. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to see him win the regional, although I guess technically at the end, the guy that came in second conceded in that final spot because he knew he wasn't going to Worlds or something, so he let Isaac have the seat. They played like a one-of game, and that player ended up winning, and he was playing the Yoda Riken Mill deck.
Yeah.
So take that with I really could care less either way. Take that with what you will, but officially Yoda Hondo won the day at Maryland.
I was going to say, moving on to Mother Bala Trooper, that's a deck we've seen, but I don't know if we've seen it take down a regional before this. So 2 new additions to the list of regional winning decks with the Kylo 2 Anakin and the Mother Bala Trooper. I know our local metamate Cody took this to the Booten Regional and made top 8 with it. He had a lot of success in Swiss as well. I think he was 6-1 or 7-1. I think it was 7-1. What was it? 6-1? It was 7-round tournament. I think he was 7-1. His only loss was to Honestly Sarcastic. So, and he had a good day. He was running a lot of aggressive. He was making a lot of aggressive plays with Price of Failure on turn 1 or turn 2, and just trying to murder people as quick as possible and take them out of the game. So that's another interesting inclusion. Not a large health pool for a 3-character deck, but a lot of damage potential. Quick. just like brOTk from the Washington regional, and then we have Sabine popping up with the partner of Yoda again, which is it really is diverse. I know that everybody is likes to pick in one thing that Maul Saber's broken or brOTk's broken or Sabine's a problem, but I have results are showing that it's not. That's just not the case to this point. And at this point, I feel like people should have it figured out. The regionals are winding down, and the meta is still looking diverse as ever. I think the Hyperloops guys were saying in one of their vlogs that every deck seems to have one bad matchup, not necessarily one deck, but more of an archetype of deck. Certain decks have a terrible win percentage against one archetype, and that's kind of how I view it. It's much broader than rock paper scissors because of how many different character combinations there are out there that are winning events and placing at events, but it's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And anybody interested, we'll be having a huge breakdown next week of pie charts, and all the pizza charts are coming back next week, so get hype and get excited about that.
Math. Science.
I know all of you love math. Yeah, but it was interesting. I even remember going back to the Talzin deck. Yeah, it's interesting how different that deck can even be too at times. Like we talked about, Cody made the top 8 at New Jersey. And I don't have the deck list with me, but I remember looking at it and seeing like it didn't have Price of Failure.
No, it did have Price of Failure.
Cody's did.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. The Arizona, the regional winner, did not have it, and it was just interesting because even like his upgrade suite, I remember I'm pretty sure it had X8s, holdouts, and hiddens. I think he might even had like a 4-speed in there, and then I know he did have He Doesn't Like You and Bait and Switch. So he seemed to go half and half, which was similar to Cody too, and it worked out well for both them, which is interesting because a lot of times, aside from 5-die, it seems like the best way to go is to go 26 at least odd cards, but with the amount of damage this can pump out, it seems like this can go half and half almost.
Yeah, it didn't seem to affect Cody either. And the other thing is that Talzin wasn't as popular when Cody played it, and Price of Failure is spot blue. So I mean, granted, if you're doing it on turn 1 or turn 2, it doesn't really matter. But maybe that player found in his testing that people were targeting Talzin first, so he didn't want to commit to the odd cost. I mean, I think it depends what you're playing. If you're playing a 3-character deck, like maybe Hero Vehicles or something, I'd say you have to try to kill Bala, even though a lot of your damage is indirect. I still think you want to do everything in your power to eliminate Bala in that matchup. But I could see a lot of decks targeting Talzin first to take away the consistency, or at least what they would perceive as consistency, until they saw that, your deck was almost a 50-50 split of even and odd.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even with Sabine Ezra, sometimes I try to take out Bala first just because Ezra is an easy pick-off target to then reset Bala and do a crazy damage swing. But it's cool. And I really like, of course, Sabine's my girl, so it's cool to see her do well in Colorado without my boy Ezra with Yoda. But still cool to see them doing well. And like you said, the OTK deck, just if you have a good pilot, that deck is so hard to beat at times.
Yeah, it really is.
But so I dig that for our regional recap. Like I said, next week will be our more in-depth for all you math nerds, of course. But you'll be able to get a broad overview of what decks have won. As most of you know, it's been diverse, and we've all just kind of said that. But we'll be able to break it down deck by deck next week for you guys.
Give you the hard facts.
Hard facts.
Truths. We speak in truths here at Golden Dice. At least we yeah.
I mean, they're true to us. Doesn't mean they're true to...
That's the perception.
Exactly. So yeah, with lead up to Worlds and this whole idea of diverse meta and stuff, this is a segment that I feel like would benefit me and anybody going there. So Tommy and I were talking, and he came up with the idea of almost kind of breaking down some of the top decks, probably 2 a week, because we got about 6 weeks to Worlds or so, and just breaking down the decks and ways to beat them, because all of these decks going through, you might find that deck sitting across from you at Worlds, or even if it's not that specific deck, as Tommy mentioned, there's a lot of decks who have the same archetype. So you'll have to be able to deal with those type of decks as compared to other ones. So we'll go first. First things first, we'll give credit where credit due is to the Hyperloops for the OTK deck, to the blue-red version of it. And honestly, Sarcastic breaking that And that's something that we're going to see. And Tommy, you were there at the New Jersey Regional where that came out. When you originally saw that deck, I don't know, just what were your first thoughts on that when you saw Honestly Sarcastic doing so well with it?
My first thoughts, in preparation for that regional, I had a fair amount of reps against OTK, against a number of pilots, just because I felt like it was a potential threat, and I wanted to just see the matchup and kind of know how it plays and what to expect. And when I did see Joe playing the deck, and I saw him eliminate the yellow and replace it with the Night Sister, it made absolute perfect sense. I mean, she just ups your consistency and your damage potential. She raises the ceiling through the roof. I don't think yellow offered you enough at this point, and I think that blue and red are perfectly capable of carrying the deck on their own with this many sets and this many cards available now. Also, the fact that Joe has really perfected the art of pinging the Night Sister, all the way dating back to Gen Con, and probably even the 4-wide deck that I think he played during Awakenings, from what I've heard. But so I thought it made perfect sense, and I honestly was not surprised at all. Almost surprised myself to say that I wasn't surprised at all to see this adaptation. It just, as soon as I saw the character spread, it just made sense. Now, I didn't have a good grasp on what his deck list was, and one of the inclusions that I thought was brilliant was the 2 probe, because it really protected him from things like hyperspace jump or retreat, or things that might be able to disrupt his own hand, like friends in low places or close quarters assault, even though I don't really think many people were running that at that point. But I was very impressed with the deck list overall after seeing it, and it is a fine-oiled machine in the right hands. It's got huge damage potential. I think the number one thing you need to do to counter a deck when playing it is understand what they are doing. And obviously, people say, "Oh, you just got to kill Seventh Sister." That's true. If Seventh Sister dies, the game is all but over. But that said, killing her is not always the right choice. If you have the opportunity to eliminate the Night Sister or eliminate Sienna Ray in one shot, I think that is the correct play, to take away leadership, to take away the pings, to take away a price of failure target. But if you do not have lethal for one of those characters showing, if he has not pinged the Night Sister 3-4 times and then you can kill her, it is not the right play to put damage on her, because putting 4 damage on a character and then immediately having that character removed with a price of failure to ready Seventh Sister is a feel-bad play. You wasted 4 damage. So I think that if you don't have lethal, the damage has to go on Seventh Sister. If you can kill one of the ancillary characters, then I absolutely think you do it when you have the chance. That's just my number one, I think, mindset going into the game, to try to prevent that damage ceiling as much as possible, to try to prevent that combo from going off in any turn of the game. And you take it one turn at a time. You just say, all right, got to get out of turn 1. You know what I mean? Let's do some damage. Yeah. Let's limit their damage. Let's get out turn 1. You have to be smart with your removal. You have to manage your resources effectively. There are turns where you might not want to play an upgrade. That's just how devastating this deck can be. You might just not be able to play an upgrade one turn, just even if you have to threaten for removal, because your opponent may not play as reckless if you're threatening to have removal. But Jack, you've gotten reps in against this deck? What's your take? Is there anything important that I missed?
No, yeah. So of course, me speaking is from a Sabine standpoint, since I've been playing her for a while, and that was where I really got most of my reps against her with. And yeah, and like you said, first turn, I almost tried to slow play it a little bit. And as we talked about, Sabine isn't really a good matchup against OTK, in my opinion, in general, except for Ezra being able to disrupt resources. So I was always trying to roll him out. But the worst part about them is that all 5 of their dice also had a disrupt side, so they could easily take away my resources. But like you said, I kind of would slow play it a little bit first round to see how aggressive they were going to be with the pinging. Because if they do, like you said, if they ping themselves 2 or 3 times, I can easily do that 4 damage to just finish off the Night Sister and take her off the board, not worry about that price of failure. And even at Connecticut, fifth round, I believe, I played no TK deck, and it came down to 1 health remaining on his 7th Sister. But I was able to take away 3 of his resets. I killed the Night Sister, so he couldn't get Price of Failure off that. And I believe he got 1 leadership off on Sienna before I was able to kill her. So I was able to take away a lot of his combos, but even then, that's still a crazy amount of damage. But like you said, I think just knowing when their resets are coming to not claim early, to save your mitigation in hand. And a lot of times I would even, if I rolled out Sabine and got 3/3 +2, and I already resolved Ezra's dice, I would leave that extra dice out there if I had a Lothcat mouse in my hand or something like that, because me preventing Maul Saber hitting for 4 is probably, me stopping that is probably better than me doing 2 more damage that wouldn't kill anybody anyways. So just knowing what they're trying to do, disrupting their hand if you have abilities to do that. Sabine doesn't, aside from Friends in Low Places, as you mentioned, but really just kind of keeping their resources low and try to keep their combo plays at a minimum is really your best bet going into this game. And taking it turn by turn, like you said, just going in and deciding I've had that happen early in testing. I put 4 damage in the Night Sister. I was like, I'll take away rerolls. And then he just pinged for 2 more rerolls and then Price of Failure. I was like, well, I took away 4 rerolls, but that really felt bad.
Yeah, that's a feel bad play. I'm trying to just comb through my mind and think of all the things that you could also identify that there is maybe a weakness. I don't know if weakness is the right word, but the fact that the deck is very aggressive and runs little to no removal in most iterations. So I think you're pretty much looking at best defense, which is the way that you may be able to get a Sienna kill if they best defense into her twice, and then you come up with 3 damage. That's a good time to kill Sienna. Outside of that, I don't really target Sienna unless she's also eating damage with Guardian if they're running fort annexes and for some strange reason they have the battlefield. I'm trying to think. So if they don't have a lot of removal, you can be in turn very aggressive with your rerolls, and you can really try to maximize your damage. You'll be able to go for your ceiling a little more. But when it comes to rerolls, another thing to think about is as soon as Maul's lightsaber hits the table, every shield side you have, it just tripled in value. It's no longer just 1 shield that you're going to put on a character and give a character health. It's almost like a removal and a shield. So it's amazing. And a lot of times it's good to place that shield on a character that's not being targeted by your opponent to force, now I got to resolve this 2 melee over here on this character that I wasn't even trying to kill yet. So you could...
Yeah, it almost turns it into indirect damage, which is pretty cool.
You can really manipulate shields. Don't re-roll your shields. When you roll dice, and as much as I said you can really maximize your damage, if a Maul Saber is on the table, you cannot match that maximum damage. It's unless you also have a Maul Saber. This deck has the highest damage ceiling in the meta. So I would value those shield sides so high. I would not re-roll them. I would resolve them. When I have no shields, I would wait to resolve them until the Maul's die is resolved. If they remove your shield side with their best defense or maybe a Feel Your Anger, or I don't know if I don't think any of them are running that, but if they remove your shield side, that's a win in my opinion, because they're spending resources or they're spending cards from hand that could be rerolls. I think that is an ideal situation for you.
Yeah, if they're spending their last resource to best defense, then they're probably not boundlessing ambition, which could be even worse.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that was Sabine had a one shield side, and that was honestly clutch at times. Just being able to prevent those rerolls. Ezra didn't have it, and that was probably my only shield side. I think the holdout might have one, but yeah, I was definitely taking shields as I could because, as mentioned before, it not only stops that reroll of the Mauls, but it forces indirect. And even if I have only Sabine left, then that's just another health that she gets, because it's not like they're running Vibra Knives. Definitely, I really don't think they're going to be running that. And they might maybe have Intimidate and Frighten, but I don't think I've seen any lists actually running that either. So
yeah, I would say Intimidate over Frighten, just because they don't want to spend a resource on that card.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I could think of in just straight gameplay is to be aware of the Seeker Droid that comes in off of her ability, because that die staying in the pool and stacking up and adding and just its value just continuing to increase is a die that you should be thinking about removing when you have the opportunity to remove a die. You should always remove Maul Saber if you have the chance, and you should probably think about removing Seeker Droid dice when they're showing something decent.
Yeah, that extra one with a focus, they're just going to leave it out there until they get a reset and then roll back in and get a two focus, which is super crushing at times.
And another thing is wait to claim. Don't be in a hurry to claim against this deck in particular, but most decks. Just be aware of what your opponent's doing. If your opponent has damage or dice that they really should be resolving, then I would hold off on claiming. You really want to wait and read your opponent and not claim. Even if you have no cards in hand, no resources, obviously nothing that you can do, then you can go ahead and claim. But if you've even got one card in hand, it's totally worthless. You're holding a holdout blaster or whatever in hand. Don't claim. Just make your opponent have to think about that and play around it. Make them wonder what's in your hand. Make them not ping the Night Sister. Make them not pitch to reroll and try to turn Maul Saber into the +4. Make them think about that. Make them think, I should probably resolve this while I can. I think that's just a little head game that you can do you could really prevent just 1 or 2 damage, which in a game where you're playing against an opponent of equal skill, it's going to make a huge difference at the end of the game.
Oh yeah, that's what bit me in the butt at Rochester was the fact that I even had mitigation in my hand. I had it for him rolling lethal, and what did I do? I claimed because it was easy pickings. I thought he was going to play around it, but that's one thing. Like the importance of that. If you asked me before, I knew that, but having experienced that, I now know twice that is not to rush to claim. And if you can, don't give them their battlefield because that's extremely annoying. The Ford annexes for the OTK.
Yeah, I would think that they shouldn't have the battlefield that often. I think I want the shields in this matchup personally. Again, it depends what deck you're playing as, but I think that I want the shields. Jack, one more thing. What cards could you potentially tech in any deck to face this? What cards do you think are good against this?
Oh, good lucks. So any any yellow deck can have friends in low places because that's a neutral. Spot a yellow character, look at an opponent's hand and discard an event that costs 1 or less. And that really takes just about any card from their hand. I mean, right, they probably got, like you said, probes and leaderships and price of failures, boundless ambition. It's taken all those key cards out of their deck. And then if you're yellow hero, of course, you could play scruffy looking nerf herder. And then depending on the situation, you can, if they just lightsaber pulled a Maul Saber, then you spend 1 and say upgrade, and you just got rid of their Maul Saber. Looking at melee decks, if you're running a lot of hero blue decks are running this right now, the close quarters assault, which is you count the number of melee dice showing and discard that many cards from an opponent's hands, and that just kind of gets rid of them. Tommy, you're going to love to hear this. You could play Tarkin, who has a good discard size. You could play some type of hand mill character. You could play Tarkin Jabba, perfect counter, right?
Wow, new meta.
And also, I think Thrawn as a character is also a good potential counter against OTK because he's able to rip those combo cards out of his hand. So off the top of my head, I think those are some really good things that you can kind of put in your deck to get rid of that. And then of course, if you're running like Boba Phasma and you got blue villain, you could put not blue villain, red villain. You could put probe in and counter them with their own probe and stuff like that. So there's some options out there.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all that. And the nice thing about every card that you listed is that all of those cards are valuable in almost any matchup. None of those cards are specifically stomping this deck. They're all playable in many situations, because mainly what you're trying to say, or what you're getting at, Jack, is that taking cards away from this deck's hand is a great way to disrupt it and beat it, because it is a combo deck and so heavily dependent on those combos going off. But discarding cards from any deck's hand is a great tool. It is very underrated in the general populace of Destiny players. I think that players undervalue how important hand disruption is. And you'll see that by good players piloting the Thrawn Talzin deck and knowing how to dissect your hand, and just having the knowledge of knowing what's in your hand after that is just it's incredibly valuable. Every turn you can sculpt your turn perfectly around that knowledge, and you can really take away that one card that can really hurt you that turn.
Yeah, and as we said before, as more sets come into play and more cards are available, those discard sides just go up in value. because obviously these 30 card decks,
They're so tight.
have just everything useful.
Yep. Every card is valuable. The last thing I'd like to go over is just sort of a little, I don't know if it's advanced or not, but just kind of how I was saying in the beginning, you want to understand how your opponent's deck works a little bit, and that comes with just reps or even playing the deck and knowing that, they want a combo, and you can almost, or they want to, can repeat that Maul Saber, and they want to keep those melee dice in the pool, and you can bait your opponent to do things. The obvious one here is bait them into a Price of Failure, and then maybe hit them with a hyperspace jump or a retreat. Now, you might need to get fancy and do a truce into that so that they don't see it coming or you're not as obvious with it. But if they Price of Failure and you've got 3 resources and your yellow deck and you've got cards in hand, then I think that that's a really risky play for your opponent. But if you're able to do things like truce, hyperspace jump, that's a great way to shut them down. Or if they, you got to save that removal because Seven Sisters getting ready to stand back up, or if your opponent has like 2 cards in hand, and then you can hit them with an all-in with a focus to a double discard. That's a great play to shut down the rest of that turn as well. Except for obviously Night Sister rerolls, but there's a lot of plays that you can do just by knowing what your opponent wants to do, and you can bait them into playing powerful cards and then shutting down their turn anyway. So that's pretty much the last thing I wanted to say, is just being aware of what your opponent is trying to do and what you can do to best disrupt it, including making them overextend into bad situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that sounds good. So if you're going to Worlds, get ready for some OTK. I think that covers it for that deck. We'll move on to our second one. Unless you any last thoughts?
I'm
Are you good? Cool. And our second deck we'll talk about is Hero Vehicles. And to me, if you're going to, I've said this before, if you're going to a regional and especially Worlds, you should be ready for this deck. Not only is it good, I don't think you need a single legendary.
No, you don't.
And where I'm going with that is that it's a cheap deck. Like anybody could get into this game, build this deck, get 20, 50, or whatever, how many reps of it, get good at it. And that's that. It's not, they don't have to go out and spend $25 on a Maul Saber, $25 per Night Sister, or Seven Sister. It's like a deck that anybody could pick up. So I think it's just something that's going to appear at every regional, or the last few regionals, of course, and Worlds, not just because it's a good deck, but because it's easily accessible.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing that's interesting about this deck is that it's actually almost, the majority of it, I think, is from legacies for the most part, because I know you're running vehicles like the Hawk and the Republic Cruiser and the Resistance Bomber and things like that. So there's a lot of legacies cards, Ayla, Rose, Easy Pickings, things like that, Vandalize. There's a ton of legacies cards in it. So
Garbage Chute.
Yeah, so you've got newer players are going to be able to field this deck because they're probably drafting legacies, or just legacies is the most accessible set because there's more of it on shelves, and it seems to be a very good, balanced, competitive set. So people are encouraging other players to buy it. So I just think that the sheer accessibility of this deck makes it prominent to be seen. And if you add the fact that it's an extremely competitive, effective deck to that equation, then it becomes an obvious choice to play test against or even play at a major event. And that's what I think we should expect to see at Worlds.
Yeah, it's good. It's got, Ayla's got 10, Rose has 9 health, I believe, and Ezra's got 7. So it's got, 3 character spread, plenty of health, and it takes time to ramp, but with that much health and some really good removal cards, it has the opportunity to do that. From my perspective of playing Sabine a lot and, just seeing other reps against it, is that if you could just burn down, and I'm not saying this is the right call for every deck, but at least for mine and for Sabine, I oftentimes didn't have to worry about any of the Garbage Chute or Easy Pickings that much because I was resolving my dice through action cheating. So I was able to kill Rose first and really shut down the resource ramp. And a lot of times, as you talked about, some of their key cards are ramping. So their tech teams and their rally aids are like the big two linchpins of their deck of getting stuff out for cheap and consistently, and being able to like vandalize them, take them off the board. I have never had too much issue with hero vehicles with Sabine, simply just because how quickly I was able to turn out damage. But man, if this gets to the end of round 3 or like middle of round 4, and they're starting to get going, and you're staring across from two like modified hawks, a resistance bomber, and a Y-wing, like you're in for some hurting.
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of times when you're playing a deck, you kill a character and you've removed 50%, 30% of their damage output, and that's just not the case with this deck. It's just, it compounds, and you've got to chew through 3 characters with which is a decent amount of health, the ability to really shield up, and it's scary. They can put you in a lot of really bad situations later in the game, especially when they have 3PO on the board and they're able to do things like resolve any die with a 3 value as a 3 focus, and now they've turned that 3 value that may have been 3 indirect, and they just turned that into 9 indirect because they had other dice in the pool, and that's scary. You don't need a lot of rerolls when you have 3PO. You need one good die, one high value die out there that can turn all your other dice into something amazing, and it's a really, really, really good deck. It optimizes a really good card in Vandalize. It optimizes Caution. A lot of the powerful cards in the meta play perfectly into this deck, and it's hard to play around. Jack, if you're playing this deck, who are you killing first?
If I'm playing against it, especially if I have action cheating, I'm definitely going for Rose first, because her special, if you can take her off the board, not only taking away the resource generation, but if they can't take the damage off the modified hawk, that is a huge detriment to them. Because for anybody that's unsure, the modified hawk, when you play it, you place 2 damage on the vehicle, and every time you activate, you have to deal damage indirectly to your characters for the amount that is on there. And with Rose's special, you can move damage off of supports. So obviously playing that and then using Rose's special to get that damage off there, so there's no negative impact on you for activating that, is huge. For 2 costs, it has like what, a 2, a 3, a 3, and a 4.
The Hawk is amazing,
sides.
and I agree. I think the one caveat to what you just said is you have to be playing an aggro deck of sorts, or at least a deck that's moderately aggressive to be able to really effectively kill Rose before she has the ability to remove the damage from the Hawks. It's tough to do. Even if you're not playing an aggro deck, targeting Rose first is probably still the right choice. Unless they just, throw down a Hawk and heal it immediately, then it's like, whatever, maybe you just kill Ayla or Ezra to take away spot yellow. But yeah, I think Rose healing the Hawks just have such a high upside on them that I think that you have to make them pay for it by eating some of that indirect.
Yeah, I always go for her, like I said, because the big mitigation guy is really Ezra with easy pickings and into the garbage chute. Those are 4 cards that can remove 2 dice each. So super good, but with Sabine, I was always able to get around it, generally, of course. But yeah, once Rose is down, then really my decision comes from what is in the discard pile. Like if there's 2 easy pickings and an into the garbage chute in the discard pile, then I'm definitely going to go for Ayla. If none of those are in the discard, I might go for Ezra to turn all of those off, because then they obviously still have them or are going to draw into them next round. And if it's just about easing, I probably go for Ayla next. I used to go for Ezra first, but I've been hit too many times with an Ayla special to blank out one of my dice to turn the Y-Wing to a special and resolve that for 4 damage to myself, which very much hurts. So I see arguments for all the characters. I think it's either Ezra or Rose first, but once one of them are dead, I can see going in between and going for Ayla, because her special is just crazy.
Yeah, I think that if you're playing a deck like Sabine, where you have windows of unmitigatable dice, whether it be through running interference or whatever it may be, I think that you should be targeting Ayla, because you're not as scared of cards like easy pickings or into the garbage chute, like you said. Like, you're just not as afraid of those mitigation pieces where Ayla's die can get around your running interference plays. Not to mention that they're going to have a lot of high value dice out there that can be turned up to some pretty good sides. Granted, she can only turn the blue or the red dice up, but she can special a Y-wing right up and go in right away with that. So she is a good target. Plus, you are removing damage from the table when you kill Ayla. 2 of her dice are very valuable. She has two sides on there. Not to mention, like we just said, she has the ability to focus other dice, and a 1 melee on top of that. So I definitely think if you're playing a deck similar to Sabine or Sabine that's not as afraid of the easy pickings or into the garbage chute, then you should be killing Ayla second. Maybe first. If Rose heals up Hawk immediately, then maybe you still just kill Ayla first. I'm not 100% on that, but I would think about it.
What about, so Tommy, you played a lot of Tarkin Seven Sisters, so just not even necessarily from that aspect, but if I'm playing a deck that's slower and doesn't have that window like Sabine or even Obi-Wan might of the unmitigatable damage, what are you looking to do when you sit down across from this?
Generally, I think I'm looking to take out Rose. Tarkin Seven Sisters a little bit different. I'll go on a little rant about that just because it kind of came up. I think that deck is very dependent on its indirect damage. You really want to be resolving Tarkin's indirect power action every single turn. And since that's something that you're doing, I think you need to be very opportunistic with your kill. You have the ability to pump it out a fair amount of damage with the upgrades that you're running, being Ancient Lightsaber and Vibro Knife. And that in conjunction with Seven Sisters melee and the focus sides from the Seeker Droid and Tarkin himself allow you to tactical mastery or all in or 3 steps ahead or whatever, 4 speed special, whatever. Choose your own adventure on that one. But you're able to then take a kill that's a little bit of a surprise. Maybe you sneak 4 damage under 3 shields and get the kill on Rose. Maybe you do that on Ezra so that they can't mitigate your dice as much anymore. But you're able to do things like that, but you kind of have to go wherever the flow takes you. So if they've started placing damage on one character more than the others, then sometimes it's best to just remove that character and whatever that character brings to the table for them with that deck. But other decks that don't have unmitigatable damage, I think I'm still going Rose, like I said, unless they immediately drop a Hawk and Rose heals it like instantly. Then I'm thinking I might take Ezra or Ayla in that situation.
Yeah, because I mean, like we said, I think Rose's value drops once at least one Hawk gets out there, because that's like her main thing. I mean, her keeping the Resistance Bomber is pretty deadly too out. But honestly, I feel like from talking to other of the champions of this deck, I guess you can almost say, but like Nick from the Hyperloops and Taxter from Artificer Knights of Ren, it almost seems like the Resistance Bomber is starting to go out of favor a little bit for them, and they've liked putting the Fang Fighter in there a little bit more, just for some more direct damage in their deck. So it's interesting. It's good. You're going to see it. And yeah, I mean, Rose, again, my point with that was that Rose is going to lose value as soon as those Hawks get out there and get healed.
Yeah. That is exactly right. Jack, how about my same question from last time? What tech cards would you say are good against this deck? Maybe not even tech, but just cards that you think have extra value in this matchup.
Oh man, definitely Vandalize. In both my matchups at the Connecticut Regional, I was able to Vandalize their Rally Aid as soon as they played it. And that just stopped their deck. And it was just so hard for them to come back from that. Aside from that, discarding their hand or even mill from the deck is also good, because obviously they're not necessarily trying to combo big plays like OTK, but they're trying to set up and get what they need on the board. And it takes some time or two, and they'll need the right cards in their hand, and they'll obviously be discarding their hand down. So that way, when they do Rally Aid, they'll be able to get the Hawks or the Y-Wings off. So just kind of being aware when they're trying to do that, and then maybe having some way to discard that last card or two from their hand, so that way they can actually combo that Rally Aid and get some of their bigger stuff out there. And also, as we said, it's hard for me. I keep going back to the Sabine decks, but yellow is easy pickings, and Ezra has a special, Ayla has a special, Rose has a special. Going through some of these cards, like the Republic Cruiser has a special. Some of them might have like R2D2, and that has a special. The Airspeed or the Y-Wing. It's such a good deck for easy pickings, because they're going to, at some time, going to be showing similar specials and stuff like that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is that if they're playing this deck correctly, or if the player is advanced in any way, they're going to know that easy pickings is a thing, as you should, and they will play around that. They're not going to roll out all their dice and be like, oh, just, have your way with me, or they're not going to walk into a scorched earth. They're not going to do that. They're going to roll out, they're going to resolve, and then they're going to roll something else out. And they may wait to pair a modifier here or there, like maybe in Ezra's case, or you do have to wait to have something to focus with Ayla's special die. But for the most part, they're not going to have all their dice on the board unless they're going for a big flanking maneuver play, which you should be able to sniff that out if it's about to happen.
I don't think too many are running that either, flanking maneuver. But yeah, if they're sitting on 2 resources and rolling everything out, you can probably expect that.
Yeah, it could happen. I mean, it's direct damage from hand. It's 2 resources. It's not difficult for this deck to have, and they're running plenty of cheap upgrades to have those dice in the pool. I mean, even if you've got 3, 4, 5 supports out, if you have a 3PO, an R2, and 3 vehicles, that's 5 damage for 2. That's really good value, and it's direct. It's not indirect like the Scorched Earth play.
Yeah, so I mean, this deck even too, like, is tough with resources, and Ezra being able to steal them, and Sabine, if I was in a tight situation where they were sitting on like 4 or 5 resources, I can't really let that happen. Her 3-for-1 disrupt was pretty good. So I think just trying to keep them off resources and trying to burn down Rose as quickly as you can are probably your best bets, along with trying to get rid of Rally Aid however you can.
Yeah, I mean, Rally Aid's a fine vandalized target. The other thing to play around Rally Aid is to use some of those discard from hand cards or dice that we were saying are so valuable in the OTK matchup. You can find value here as your opponent thins their hand for the Rally Aid play. Maybe you decide to use one of your focus sides to turn a die to a discard or double discard, or maybe you hit them with the close quarters assault when they've got 2 or 3 cards left in hand and they're about to hit the Rally Aid and drop in a free vehicle. So I think that's something that you can be aware of, and that you can maximize the value of certain things in that way. The other one thing I'd like to talk about teching against this deck would be any kind of shield hate is very important, because this deck can shield well. Mm-hmm. Republic Cruiser is an excellent counter to things like Maul's Lightsaber. And Caution is amazing. And with 5 character dice and no specific character being super valuable outside of maybe Rose being the most valuable early character, you can really use any of these dice early to just shield up a character. It's way better that way. So things that I think are good against this deck would be the obvious Intimidate, or what was the other one with Maul's art?
Frighten.
Yes, Frighten is good against it. I know I was running Ewok Village in my Tarkin deck because I felt like it was a great way to get around a Caution, because quite often what happens is, in the end of the round, when they've got that character die out that just wasn't cooperating and kept getting re-rolled, they would be like, all right, well, that's the one I'm going to use for Caution. And then, that's when you claim and you remove the 3. It's like 3 damage. Intimidate's very valuable too if you're running indirect damage, because shields are awful for you. So you really want to be able to intimidate and then deal your indirect. That way they can't force it into the shields. But yeah, I think that anything that is shield hate, including even Vibro Knife for any unblockable damage like Obi Saber, is more valuable in this matchup than some other matchups.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with all that. All of that sounds really good. All right. So we'll wrap up this section. Is there any closing thoughts you have about, you can even jump back to OTK if you want, or about vehicles?
No, I mean, I would say that, for both those decks, just be aware that those character combinations aren't set in stone, although I would say that those are definitely the ones that are the most popular. But I would not be surprised if you saw Ezra replaced with Jar Jar in some iterations, or even a Yoda version of a vehicle deck. I know Riggs runs one with Yoda. He runs the Spock Lost Trio. And you may see the yellow version of OTK, although I firmly believe that the blue-red version is far superior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just keep that in mind, because that changes things. If you do see the yellow version of OTK, just be aware that they may have something like Bait and Switch, and that's a card that seems to burn people over and over and over again. Actually, I do have one more parting thought on the vehicle deck. It just came to me.
Do it.
I lost in the last round of Swiss to Riggs, actually, who we just mentioned, his vehicle deck, and I really believe that one of the major contributing factors to my loss was at the roll-off, I I won and I selected his battlefield so that I got shields. And I think that was a mistake because I think Ewok Village would have made up the difference for me and really could have put me out in front because I claimed every single time. And claiming Weapons Factory Alpha was a very feel-bad experience for me when I know that I could have been removing shields consistently every turn.
You mean you don't have vehicles in your deck that you could play for decreased cost?
No, I do not.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And starting off this world's recap and what you might see or whatever we're going to call it, 2-3 character decks, right? Let's bring back Pomaz, make Pomaz great again, right? Let's put this meta once. It's funny. I've even seen people try Ezra Poe. It's just not anywhere near as good as it used to be.
Yeah, it's not going to be as consistent, but I bet you could
make a decent build.
You could play that and win some games. Yeah, I bet you could win some games with that still.
Oh, totally agree.
I bet you could do Poe Yoda and win some games with that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. So yeah, that's our roundup. We're approaching an hour, so we want to start wrapping up, but I'm going to ask you one question. If you had to go, I know you've been out of funk a little bit, right? With Destiny. You haven't had as much time for some weird reason.
Yeah. And I can't put my finger on why I haven't had as much time.
And you were a standard guy anyways, but on Monday, yes, our local game store is finally having a Trilogies night, which part of me is happy, part of me is upset because I was going to skip this next Monday and go play Legion since Legion came out, but I've been asking for a Trilogies night for some time, and Joe's finally doing it, so I would feel bad not going.
Yeah, you got to go now.
So I'll be there, and I just want to ask one question. Oh man, I don't even know exactly what I want to ask. Great, now I'm on the spot and I look like an idiot. If you had to bring...
Jack, I'm not going to hold you to one question. You can ask multiple questions.
If you were going to a Trilogies event, what type of deck, either archetype or character, would you try to bring? It doesn't have to be the exact pairings, but it's you could say, I think Talzin's going to be really good. I want to bring Talzin. I want to bring Han and 2 clone troopers because that's going to give me a bunch of rerolls. Is there any specific thing you think is going to shine early in Trilogy? I know it's evolved a little bit, but it's only the Walders are tested only so much.
Yeah, it's a very new format. I think that it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of characters for it being just one set because you have access to the Rivals kit and the starters and the 2-player starter.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of characters. That said, the interesting things to me, I do think Talzin's interesting, although with a limited card pool, limiting yourself to odd cards feels kind of bad, just as I think a monocolor deck also is kind of difficult to do. Maybe Kylo will make an appearance anyway. You could do a Kylo Anakin or a Kylo Lobot. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if I saw that, or a Kylo Talzin. But I think the Talzin double veteran stormtrooper is really interesting. I think that Tarkin Afra is really interesting, but I kind of have a crush on Tarkin for the most part. So I'm a little biased. But it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you saw Yoda. And I think that... All right, here's one for you. Here's a hot take for you. Are you ready? Ready, Jack? Force Wave. I think Force Wave will be good because I think you'll see a lot of 3-character decks, and I think specifically Yoda with Force Wave is...
Yeah, that's such a dirty card.
It's a lot of damage. I recently added that to my Tarkin 7 Sister deck just because on paper, 3-character decks seem like they should be mathematically a little bit more difficult for me to beat. So I felt like Force Wave could give me the legs to beat that. I dropped Force Lightning and I put in 2 Force Wave.
Cool. I dig it. All right, so I'm bringing Force Wave and Yoda, and if I lose, I'm going to blame you.
Fair enough.
Perfect. Cool. So, next week we'll give a recap of how Trilogies went and my thoughts on it. I've only played a handful of games, beat Shane a few times, called it a day.
Who hasn't done that?
But yeah, everybody, I think, except for Flock, because Shane gives Flock bad decks and then beats him up.
Yeah. Oh, play this Kylo Ventress deck. What?
And then Flock's like, wow, I really can't beat Shane, man. This game is tough.
Shane's so good. Yeah, if I gave you a flaming bag of poop, you wouldn't be able to beat me either, Flock. Come on, dude.
I can't wait till he listens to this. Both of them. All right. So that is our episode for the week. We're just over an hour. Again, come back next week. We'll have the pizza charts for you guys, and we're also going to dive specifically into 2 more decks as World approaches, just to give you guys ideas of these decks and what they're doing and how to counter that and all those good things. Tommy, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
We had another Patreon join our Discord. His name's Alan, and he is a super great guy, and I am still just absolutely humbled and blown away that anyone would ever even just download a podcast and listen to us talk. It doesn't seem real to me, but I just want to let everybody know that we're so grateful that you even take the time out of your day to consume this content that we've created, and we're truly flattered and touched by all the support and just nice comments and references that have been given out for us. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, they're definitely not subscribing for Shane. I think Alan heard you were coming back this week. So he's like, all right, now I'll support.
I doubt it.
But yeah, shout out to Alan and Jason also. Those are our 2 Patreons. It's been really good. Get to talk to those guys in our Discord and just talk about life and Destiny and some more Destiny. But yeah, that'll do it for our episode. Of course, for anybody listening, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, and of course, we have our Patreon. And I was hoping that my custom mat would be in by the time we record, but it isn't. So whenever that's up, I'll post pictures of it in case anybody is looking to order one and just kind of wanted to wait to see how it turns out, which I don't blame you for. But yeah, so going forward, come back next week for some overall in-depth analysis of the meta and where it's going, and 2 more decks. But hopefully Shane gets rid of his dial-up and we can have him next week.
That's him dialing up. It was a really horrible imitation.